Good day, Coach Jude. My name is Ana Rose Gregoria Soto, and today I will be going to explain about why study children and adolescents, and also the current concerns about today's children. So, studying children and adolescents. So let's talk about why do we need to study about children and adolescents, and why is it important? Think of them as the foundation of our future. They're growing, they're learning, and shaping the world they'll inherit. Here's why understanding their experiences and why it matters the most. So, from birth to age 18, kids go through massive physical, cognitive, and emotional changes. Studying these stages helps us spot what's typical, like when a toddler starts talking, versus what might need extra support, like delays in motor skills. For example, research on teen brain development explains why they're more likely to take risks, like speeding in a car, and how we can design better drivers programs to keep them safe. Next, kids don't learn like adults, but studying how their memory, attention, and creativity evolve, we can create teaching methods that actually works for their age. Imagine a 6-year-old trying to sit through a college lecture. It wouldn't make sense. But play-based learning, that's gold for their growing brains. Childhood habits set the stage for lifelong health. Research on trends like screen time, nutrition, and bullying helps us tackle issues early. For instance, studies on teen mental health crises have led to better school counseling programs and anti-bullying campaigns. So, in short, kids are both our future and our responsibility. As a future teacher or future parents in the future, by studying their worlds, we build better support systems, from classrooms to healthcare, so they can thrive. After all, their success is our success. So let's move on to the current concerns of today's children. So before I will going to explain the different concerns about today's children, let's explain first what's really going on with today's children and why is it a concern. So today's children face a complex of challenges. So when we say complex, they were facing a lot of different challenges as they grew up. So including rising mental health, concerns by technologies, pervasive influence, which brings both educational opportunities and risks like addiction and cyberbullying. Poverty and hunger persist, depriving many of basic necessities, while exposure to violence threatens their safety and well-being, hindering school adaptation and academic success. Access to education remains unequal, and childhood obesity continues to be a public health issue, highlighting the interconnected factors impacting their overall development.
The story of Jeffrey Dahmer and Alice Walker are both individuals endured profoundly difficult childhoods, yet their life trajectories diverged into two tragically different outcomes. One became a notorious killer while the other became a celebrated writer. Now, I will share a short story about these two people. Let's start with Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, who infamously known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, was born in 1960 and was beaten to death in prison by a fellow inmate in 1994. When he was 34 years old, he was convicted of murdering and dismembering 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. In his childhood, Jeffrey Dahmer had a troubled childhood. His parents constantly beat before they divorced. His mother had emotional problems and doted on his younger brother, and he felt that his father neglected. When he was 8 years old, Jeffrey was sexually abused by an older boy. But most individuals who suffered through such childhood pains never go on commit Dahmer's grisly crimes. In 1988, Dahmer murdered 3 people. He first met a 14-year-old boy at a bus stop and asked him to post nude photos. Soon after they arrived at Dahmer's apartment, he had sex with the boy, drugged him, strangled him, dismembering him, and smashed his bone with a sledgehammer. In 1991, when he was arrested, the police found in Dahmer's apartment and at least 15 dismembering bodies, a head in the refrigerator and a heart in the freezer, and a blue barrel of acid for leftovers. Now let's proceed the story of Alice Walker. Alice Walker is a celebrated American author, poet, and novelist, popularly known for her Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Color Purple. She was born in 1994 in rural Georgia to a family of sharecroppers. Alice overcame childhood setbacks, including a severe eye injury, and became a powerful voice in literature and advocacy. To trace Walker's journey from her challenging childhood through her involvement in the civil rights movement, to her rise as a groundbreaking literary figure and human rights advocate. While the documentary offers a concise and engaging overview of Alice Walker's remarkable life, its limitation in a deep exploration of themes such as the interaction of race, gender, and political consciousness through it remains a commendable introduction that sparks further interest. This powerful juxtaposition challenged the notion of environmental determinism and forces us to confront the intricate interplay between our past and the choices that shape our future. Also, they teach us, while trauma can leave indelible marks, our response to it remains a deeply personal and powerful act. Our past may influence us, but it does not define us. The ultimate act of self-determination lies in our ability to choose our path regardless of our baggage we carry.
Short feedback about historical views about childhood. So, these documents show how society view of children has changed over time. So, from believing that they are inherently bad to seeing them as a neutral, either bad or good at the beginning. So, to the idea that they are inherently good, these views are important because they affect the way the parents raise their children, and the policies regarding education and rearing. Today, adolescence is increasingly valued as a crucial stage in life that needs to be focused on to help them become a good adults in the future. So today, our perspective or my perspective on children has changed. We see childhood as a crucial and unique stage in life. that shape a person's future. The most modern perspective on raising and understanding children are based on observation and how they learn, develop, and deals with life and challenge.
Good day everyone, my name is Ashnicole Salcedo. So today I will going to discuss about socio-cultural contexts such as culture, ethnicity, gender, and gender and development. So have you ever wondered why people are so different? I mean, we all live in the same world, but everyone has their own unique story, right? Well, a lot of that comes down to our background. Things like our culture, ethnicity, gender, sex, and how we identify ourselves. So, first up, culture. Think of it as the set rules, belief, and tradition your family and community pass down. It's like a secret recipe that makes you, you. For example, here in the Philippines, we have this beautiful tradition called pagmamano. We say mano po, where we show respect to our elders by gently taking their hand and touching it to our forehead. It's a cultural thing that shows respect and love. Next, let's dive into ethnicity. This is all about your heritage, your nationality, race, religion, and language. It's like about being part of a big family with shared roots. For instance, if you're Cebuano, Bicolano, or Ilocano, you share a common language, history, and set of tradition that create a strong sense of connection. And that feeling of belonging is what we call ethnic identity. It's the sense of membership you feel within your ethnic group. It's rooted in shared language, religious customs, values, and history. Being proud of where you came from and feeling connected to your roots is a big part of your identity. So next, sex and gender. Since a lot of people still confuse them, so sex, this refers to the biological differences between males and females' chromosomes, hormones, and autonomy. It's the physical aspect of what makes us male or female. Gender, this isn't just about being a boy or a girl. It's about how we see ourselves and how society sees us. It includes our feelings, behaviors, and expectation. And guess what? Our society is starting to understand that gender isn't so black and white. We're becoming more open and accepting of different identities and expression. Finally, there's gender and development. This is a fancy term of making sure everyone's men and women has equal opportunities and can reach their full potential. It's about building a society where everyone is treated fairly, has a voice, and can live free from violence. The Philippine Commission on Women is all about this, creating a world where everyone is empowered and respected. So, as you can see, our backgrounds, our culture, ethnicity, sex, and gender play a huge role in shaping who we are. By understanding and celebrating these differences, we can create a more inclusive and awesome world for everyone.
So, good morning everyone. I am Rosel Gallarde from Bitalad IA 1B. So, now, let's talk about the child's developmental process and periods. So, what is the child's developmental process and periods? Child's developmental is the lifelong process of change from conception to adulthood, involving physical, cognitive, social, and emotional growth, marked by predictable stages called developmental periods. These periods, such as infancy and toddlerhood, birth to 2 years, early childhood, 3 to 5 years, middle childhood, 6 to 11 years, and adolescence, 12 to 18 years, are characterized by milestones like learning to walk, talk, and develop independence. The process is continuous, with each stage build upon the previous, but each child follows a unique space influenced by their biological makeup and environmental factors. But before that, I prepared a short video clip for you to have a deeper understanding about the fertilization process and periods.
Mucus that guard the entrance to the uterus. During ovulation, this barrier becomes thinner and changes its acidity, creating a friendlier environment for the sperm. On the other side, after releasing the egg, at about day 14 of the period, the egg arrives at a specific portion of the tube, called the ampular isthmic junction. It rests for another 30 hours. Fertilization occurs in this portion of the tube. Once the sperm has entered the uterus, contractions propel the sperm upward into the fallopian tubes. To meet the waiting egg, sperm must travel from the vagina to the fallopian tubes, a tough journey that few sperm survive. This process may be nature's way of allowing only the healthiest sperm to fertilize the egg to provide the best chances of having a healthy baby. The first sperm enter the tubes a few minutes after ejaculation. But, however, the first sperm are not likely to fertilize the egg. Motile sperm can survive in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. The magic happens in the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tube pushes the egg towards the uterus. Cilia push the sperm towards the egg. Also, the surrounding cells of the egg produce a chemical that attracts sperm. The sperm first burrow through the cells of the corona radiata. Then, upon contact with the zona pellucida, the sperm bind to the receptors in the zona pellucida. Then, the enzyme-filled cap of the sperm, called the acrosome, releases its stored digestive enzymes. Finally, the sperm must fuse with the egg plasma membrane. This event causes the egg membrane to change and prevent other sperm from attaching to it. Now attached, the sperm's nucleus, where the chromosomes are stored, enters the egg cell, looking for the egg's nucleus. Egg combines genetic material with the sperm to create a full set of chromosomal DNA, with 23 pairs of chromosomes that contain a unique copy of half the genes of the parent source. This is the blueprint for a whole new, unique person that instantly determines gender, hair color, eye color, and many other characteristics. The combined sperm and egg is called a zygote. It is the earliest developmental stage. It divides rapidly in the days following fertilization. The zygote then travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus. After fertilization, the zygote continues to divide and morph into a blastocyst ball of 16 cells, approximately 5 to 6 days after fertilization. It is smaller than the tip of a ballpoint pen. Only 20% to 30% of fertilized eggs will reach the blastocyst stage. Embryos that survive this stage of development have a high implantation potential once transferred into the uterine cavity. The blastocyst hatches out of its shell and burrow into the uterine wall, endometrium, which serves as the source of oxygen and nutrients. About 4 weeks from the beginning of the last period, near the next period, the blastocyst has begun to produce the pregnancy hormone to tell your ovaries to stop releasing eggs. From then on, the menstrual cycle pauses. The blastocyst is called an embryo now. Home pregnancy test might be able to get a positive result. At week 5, the circulatory system, brain, and spinal cord are beginning to form, and the tiny heart will start to beat. The baby's heart beats about 54 million times before birth. The placenta provides oxygen and nutrients to the growing baby and removes waste products from the baby's blood via the umbilical cord. The nose, mouth, and ears are starting to shape at week 6. At weeks 7 and 8, the embryo has doubled in size since last week's. Little hands and feet start to grow. At week 9 to 12 of pregnancy, the embryo is called a fetus. The baby is almost fully formed and has completed the most critical portions. The facial features are more recognizable. The fetus's head is rotated and bent towards the chest, and he can occasionally touch his face. The diaphragm muscles start to grow. The reproductive, circulatory, and urinary systems are all at an advanced stage of development. The fetus will urinate in the amniotic sac. It is a sign of the proper functioning of the fetus's body. If the baby is a girl, her ovaries contain millions of eggs. If the fetus is a boy, his testicles will already start producing testosterone, male sex hormone, which is necessary for the development of his reproductive system. She or he is about 5 centimeters in size and 14 grams in weight. She or he is growing and maturing until ready to birth.
So now we're done in the fertilization process and periods. Let's move on to the infancy to adulthood. So now let's talk about the Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. So first of all, who is Jean Piaget? So Jean Piaget is a Swiss psychologist who develops the cognitive development. So according to him, the child has 4 distinct developmental processes, which are the sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational stage. So what is the sensory motor? So from birth to 2 years old, the child is using the 5 senses. So, what are the 5 senses? So, we have the sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch, and sense of hearing. Through these senses, the child is exploring the world using these senses and action. So the child here is developing the object permanence. So now let's move on to pre-operational stage from 2 years old to 7 years old. So represent and refers to objects and events with words or images. Use intuitive rather than logical reasoning. Believe inanimate objects possesses human feelings or emotions. So in this stage, the child is learning through symbolic functions, images, and words. So the child in this stage is trying new things, exploring new things through play pretend, but in this stage the child is still pretty egocentrism because still learning. Now let's move on to concrete operational stage from 7 to 11 years old. Concrete operational stage conserve, reverse their thinking and classify objects, think logically and understand analogies, but only about concrete events. So the child is developing here is the conservatism, mathematical, and transformation. So now let's move on to formal operational stage. So from 12 above, use abstract reasoning about hypothetical events, situations, considered logical possibilities, and systematically examine, test, and hypotheses. So now the teenager here now is applying critical thinking about the possibilities and thinking hypothetically and systematically about life. So the child develop here the abstract logic, potential for mature and moral reasoning. So this is the short topic about child's developmental process and periods. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something.